Hey everyone, we are so glad you joined us for our first lymphedema patient roundtable. I'm going to do a little bit of a preamble as everybody starts logging on, and we're just so glad that you're able to join us this evening. And I guess a great way for us to start out is to introduce our panelists tonight. We've got some great ones. And I know many of you are wondering, how's Cam? Cam? We're going to get to that right off from the get-go. But first of all, I want you to meet Kelly Bell. Kelly, you can wave to everybody. Kelly Bell is veteran fighting lymphedema. He's got an amazing, impactful story of finally getting diagnosed and on the path to managing his condition successfully. He's full of inspiration, and we just love Kelly Bell. We have Mary Kastenberg. Hey, Mary, good to see you. Mary is a primary lymphedema patient. She also represents Lympha Press, and she's got a great story to share. Betty Westbrook, you are the force behind Camp Watch Me and also a certified lymphedema therapist. We're so glad you're with us, and we're going to find out more about Camp Watch Me. But many of you in the lymphedema community have looked to Cam. Cam Ayala, it's so good to have you here, my friend. And you are an inspiration to many of us, and many of us have been following you with concern this week because you had a hospital stay. So before we talk about anything, we all want to know, how are you doing?
Hey, Brenda. Hey, all the panelists and all the viewers. First off, I'm fine. I'm well. I'm alive. Taking it one day at a time, as all of the lymphies out there do. There's obviously a lot of challenges that come with being a lymphedema patient, or a lipedema patient for that matter. I'll be as condensed as possible, but basically early last week when I was wrapping up my day, I started having a pretty severe sore throat and my right knee started aching like crazy. And any patient who has undergone any episode of infection, whether it's cellulitis or streptococcus or any of the other bacterial infections that are relatively common with lymphedema, it is a very specific pain, and you know that it's nothing to be taken lightly or to sleep on, which I didn't, because I couldn't get any sleep at all. I was in that much pain. So the next day, I went to one of my orthopedic doctors, and they basically did an aspiration where they drained the joint fluid out of my knee, and instantaneously, just looking at the syringe, it was kind of like a brown murky color. And me being someone who's experienced these episodes of infection multiple times over the past 6 years, I could just tell from the coloration, as did the orthopedic surgeon, that it was infected. So because of COVID, they had to take extra precautions, and that just added an extra wrench into the system. I thought I was out of 2020 scot-free, but you know what? That's just been kind of the theme for everybody. But bottom line, they had to immediately admit me to the ER so they could do all the COVID testing. That way they could safely do surgery the following day, which they did here in the medical center here in Houston, Texas on Wednesday evening. And in the past, I've had bouts of infection that were strep related, that has gotten to the joint. But this time it was a little bit more severe in that I've now been diagnosed with osteomyelitis, which that essentially means infection of the bone. And one thing I think a lot of lymphedema patients who maybe not have extreme exterior swelling in the arms or the legs, it doesn't mean that our daily struggles aren't real, that they aren't severe. And I think when a lot of people look at me, it's kind of twofolds. Most of the time, they can't tell that I have lymphedema. And part of that is because I am very compliant with all my compression modalities, which I know Betty and Kelly and Mary and I will share in our own right of what we do to manage our condition. But for me, when you don't have a swollen limb, most people just assume you're fine. And with a condition like lymphedema, there are a lot of other comorbidities that can come along with that. And for me, one thing I've struggled with specifically over the past 6 years are these chronic infections. And though on the surface, I may look super healthy and athletic and relatively thin, but there's stuff going on the inside of my body that I still don't know all the answers to. Some of the top specialists still don't know the answer to, but I'm optimistic because I have the incredible lymphedema community supporting me, and an amazing company like Medical Solutions and Lympha Press to have my back. And ultimately, and I'll get more into this later, to have an incredible device like the Optimal Plus, which even as I am post-op has been a pivotal part of my recovery, not only from a swelling management, but most importantly, a pain management. And that's a new application for the Lympha Press that I hadn't really experienced personally like I currently am. So I'm fine. I'm happy to be here, and we'll get more into that later on. But thank you for facilitating, Brenda, and all the other panelists on the call.
We totally had to address that first because there was so much chatter on social media. How's Cam? Send prayers to Cam. I hope you felt all those prayers, Cam. And this is our first lymphedema patient roundtable. For those of you who have been following Medical Solutions Supplier and Lympha Press, for the last 7 months, we've been doing lipedema patient roundtables, an underdiagnosed condition that affects so many people. And we've heard stories of how the Optimal Plus helps to reduce pain, increase mobility, fat pads disappear. And then it sort of came to us, wait a minute, we should be doing roundtables for the lymphedema community we have for over 25 years and far longer for Lympha Press served the lymphedema community. I think the key in what you're saying too is how important it is to have good medical professionals on your case. And gosh, 20 years ago, lymphedema was about as unknown as lipedema is in today's world. Betty, from your perspective, what advice would you give? And by the way, we're not dispensing medical advice tonight, but getting that diagnosis. Kelly, I know you took a long time to get diagnosed.
Yeah.
How do you approach the patient that comes to see you and doesn't quite know what's wrong with them, Betty?
I kind of approach it like a puzzle. I love a good challenge. And I've told people before that I really had this burning passion after I learned about lymphedema. I've explained it like I felt like people's houses were on fire and I was the only person who had a fire truck and like a fire hose. And so when my patients come to me and they say, you know, I've had this for years and years. I've been told to take a water pill. I've been told to lose weight and all kinds of other things that don't seem to help them. I just kind of try to step back and say, okay, did you have family members in the past that you recall that had something similar to this? Did grandma have swollen ankles all the time? You know, did grandpa kind of have swelling in his legs too? And kind of take a step back. And then I encourage them and say, hey, we have something that we can help you with now, because now it's not just throwing darts in the dark. We have a name, we have a treatment plan, and you can have a community that can help you. So that's my biggest deal. I mean, I have a lot of things I could say to that, but I just really try to encourage them that there's answers out there and that they don't have to do it alone, and we can give them a name to what it is, and we can set them up with the resources, compression, manual lymphatic drainage, a community of people around them to help get them some answers and some results.
Yeah. You know, people want to know that they're not alone. And that's part of the reason why these social communities are so important and why we do these roundtables for both lipedema and now lymphedema. We're here to connect you and to help you and encourage you. And one of the most encouraging people I know, one of the most inspirational stories is Kelly Bells. Kelly has this photo. I wish I could show it. In fact, it's in our 2021 calendar. 12 gallons of fluid removed from his body after he was finally diagnosed. But your diagnosis didn't come easy, did it?
No, it was a struggle. It took me 5 years, and during that struggle, I think it made me very aware of the struggles other people who don't, because like I have plastic in my thoracic duct that actually shows up on CAT scans. So you would think that would be somewhere where we would go. I had even had lymph nodes shown filled from around my stomach, and then you know, surgeries were ones that would explode and ones that had filled up in my chest. They were actually removed, and it still, even after that surgery, it was 2 years in battling to get diagnosed. I mean, I say battling, I'm talking it went to the highest levels of the Department of Defense to get the diagnosis.
Yeah, and in that waiting period, when you're looking to find out what is this thing, it can be heart-wrenching and depressing. You even say that you battled suicidal thoughts as you were trying to get to your resolve.
I mean, it's hard to say, but
I know. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, this is honest. I talk about it. I mean, after a bad day at the doctor, a bad day at the Coast Guard, because like, again, at this point in time, since my lymphedema is in my trunk, you look like you're just getting fat. You're held to certain standards, and I was actually at the same time I'm battling for my life here. I got the Coast Guard punishing me for being obese, and so, and I'm watching my family having to like fall all over me to help me like struggle through this thing, and you know, just kind of figure out, like, you just think to yourself, like, this is not going to end, like, go well. How much longer am I going to do this? And how much longer am I going to put my family through this? And so I will be honest with everybody. I actually went home that day, went down to my basement, unlocked my safe, grabbed my gun and said, I don't know why I'm here. And fortunately, my wife, who has been.
She's an angel.
Oh, she is.
She's a total angel.
Without her, I would not be here. I tell people, if you have a family member that has this, please support them. They're not, and she's never doubted me. She knows the kind of person I am. I did everything to try to alleviate this and the struggle. And I mean, and I just, you can't get help. I mean, but by the time I got diagnosed, I'd seen 34 different doctors and surgeons when you think of it.
Wow.
And none of those were part of that diagnosis. And only 3 of those were part of the surgical aspect of it. And I just kept spending money and trying to, like, whether insurance covered or not, I just tried to get help, and I couldn't find anybody. And I lived right outside of DC. So.
Well, thank goodness you finally got your diagnosis, because ever since that day, boy, you have been a champion for the cause. You can follow Kelly at Veteran Fighting Lymphedema, and we'll put some graphics up when we do the editing for this. Nita Cluis is one of our participants tonight, attendees. Nita, thank you so much for being here. And she notes that, especially in rural areas, it is very difficult sometimes to find an expert that will diagnose and treat lymphedema. That's sort of going back to, Betty, your fire hose analogy. The house is on fire and we need fire hoses to put this out. We need more, right? But now I want to talk to Mary. Mary, you are a primary lymphedema patient, and I want to know, when did your family realize something's different here? My daughter needs help.
I actually have 5 older siblings, and it was 2 of my siblings who noticed at first. My brother noticed one July 4th when we were all at a lake that my leg looked just different. And then my sister in December, gosh, I don't even know the year off the top of my head. It was about 13 years ago. So 2007, she noticed that my thigh was bigger. It was about 3 inches bigger. So I was actually dancing in my kitchen as 13-year-olds do. And she pulled me over and grabbed my mom's sewing tape, and we realized something was going on. So after that, as every other patient with lymphedema, there was started the journey of going to doctors, having doctors tell me that my leg was definitely full of something, but nothing else. MRIs, CAT scans. It luckily only took me 6 months to find a nephrologist who diagnosed me. But it's a journey. I mean, it's always a journey. And looking back, so part of me is like, why didn't I notice sooner? What can you do?
So it is a journey, and we want to be really honest about the struggles of the journey, but we also want to talk about the high spots, the bright spots, the ways to manage your condition. And Cam, you said it's almost like a full-time job in a way, managing your lymphedema, but you have it down to a science. So what's a typical day in the life of Cam Ayala on a regular day to manage your lymphedema?
Yeah, and just to take a quick step back as we talk about the journey, because I really do think that it is a never-ending journey in the sense that there's pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis, right? The pre can be a complete disaster for a lot of patients who have been misdiagnosed, or they do get the diagnosis, but to your point earlier, they could live in a rural area or a part of town where there are no lymphedema therapists. Mm-hmm. There are no DMEs to dispense pumps, right? There's a lot of challenges that can come if you live in an area where you don't have all of the items, the tools in the toolkit that I'm about to talk about here in a few moments that make managing your lymphedema very possible and very enjoyable and very effective. So then the post-diagnosis comes into play when, okay, now that you know what it is, what are you going to do about it, right? Because you're almost in that fork in the road where you can play the woe is me card, or you can grab it by the bootstraps, take it by the reins and say, you know what, this is what it is. I'm going to control my lymphedema, not the inverse. And that's one of the things that the older I've gotten, I've been blessed to have been diagnosed at age 11, because for me, it's the only normal I've known. I've never been an adult without lymphedema. So it's part of my routine. It is part of my normal, right? So to answer your question, what does a day in the life of a primary or really any lymphedema patient look like? But for me specifically, when I wake up, first off, I remove my nighttime garment. I wear a quilted padded nighttime garment that's compression grade that I get custom made once every year. That has been amazing. And then as soon as I remove that, I'll do just a little bit of breathing exercises just to really engage my core, because that's where my lymphedema is most prominent, much like Kelly's is in my abdominal region. Mm-hmm. And then after that, after I've put on my contacts and gotten ready for the day, I put on my daytime compression garment, which consists of a flat knit. And then sometimes I'll wear a Velcro apparatus over that. I won't name any names of any of the manufacturers, but you guys can message me privately and I can share that information. And then I end up my day with using my Lympha Press pump. And it's really part of this, what I like to call compression ecosystem, because compression garments are great at keeping everything sustained. Pumps are great for getting the volume down. And then wearing a nighttime garment can be great for just kind of putting the bow on it at the end of the day. So again, that compression ecosystem on top of moving as much as I can and naturally moving that lymph is what's given me the ability to stay in front of the progression of this condition for over 22 years now.
In your 22 years of experience, I know that you have had experience, and we don't talk about the names of other pumps, but there was a particular reason why you said, I want to work for Lympha Press.
And truthfully, I had opportunities to work for other pump companies. And I think every single pump is not created equally, right? And just like lymphedema patients, it's not a one size fits all condition. We hear that all the time because there are a lot of unique attributes. But for me personally, and what I hear from a lot of my patients that I deal with daily, is that the ease of use is what was my big selling point, because if it's easier to use, guess what? I'm going to use it more, right? It's just like if you're working out in a gym, if there's a gym that's more accessible and you find the equipment to be more your size and, better fitting for your type of body type, then you're going to get better results. And that's what I've experienced with Lympha Press. Because it's easier to use, I use it more often, and the benefits have, definitely continued to improve year over year.
Yeah, I think it makes a very compelling story because it's a personal story. And Mary, similarly, when you first saw the difference, and by the way, this is not a commercial for Lympha Press, but it is a very powerful tool to help you manage your condition. So that's why we are definitely going to talk about it. And I want to get to you, Kelly, about it. And then I want to talk Camp Watch Me. So Mary, tell me about your Lympha Press experience.
Yes, I was lucky enough, like Cam, I tried a lot of different things. I have tried different pumps. I've tried different types of compression. And I actually was lucky enough to have procedures done. Again, anyone can privately message me and I can go through all of that with them. So my volume wasn't really as severe as it was. So I met Cam and he told me how great Medical Solutions and Lympha Press was. And he said, you know, if you ever would like to apply, let me know. And at that point I had a pump. I wasn't really using it. It was kind of like if I, you know, felt heavier, if I felt like my leg was achier, I would get in it. And so at the start of the interview process, Medical Solutions actually sent me an Optimal Plus. And they said, you know, we don't want you to start the interview process until you've tried our product. And to be honest, I was like, you know, I don't really have the volume. I haven't seen a difference in the other pumps I've been using. What if I, you know, I really want to work for them? What if it doesn't make a difference? But I tried, and, you know, after 2 weeks, my biggest thing was my fibrosis had broken down so much around my ankle that I had to buy new tennis shoes. I work out every day, and my heel kept slipping out. And that was incredible for me because despite all of the surgeries, you know, I still do have my problem areas, and I had no idea pumps could break down fibrosis. So that won me over.
I loved, you know, Dr. Karen Herbst has been a part of our lipedema patient roundtables, and she says Lympha Press has been proven to break down the fibrosis and break it up. And a lot of it is because of the advanced therapy that the Optimal Plus has. The higher pressures that are available, pre and post therapy, all those things. And I saw you nodding vociferously, Kelly, when Cam was talking about his experience with
Cam and I actually had the same pump.
Therapy.
Yeah, Cam and I had the same pump originally, and I'll be honest with you, it was from a patient standpoint, it was horrible. At that point in time, I had lymphedema from head to toe, by the way, if anybody's curious, from that damage. And so it was not a single person process to put that system on. So there's automatically your mind dependence was gone because I couldn't function that way. And then I just started looking at how it works and realized that I didn't like even how it worked from an engineering standpoint, because that's what I am. And so I was ecstatic to get it. I will tell you, when I first got the pump, I had my wife, my son comes in, because my son would have to help me quite a bit because my wife would be at work late or something. And I would say, okay, get ready. I don't know how this thing works. And so I got into it. He's standing at the door, and I get into it, zip it up, and he looks at me and he goes, "That's it? That's it." And he goes, "That's it?" I said, "No, really, that's it." I was like, "I just get at this button." Actually, I grabbed my phone and went, boop. And he goes, "Okay, I love this." My son loves my pump. Just because he does not have to be part of it any longer.
Yeah, and you can be independent in using it. You don't need help. I've talked with many people who used to have a team of people get their legs elevated up and putting straps on. It's hard. If it's, like you said, if it's not easy to use, it's going to sit in a closet and collect dust. So having effective therapy that's easy to use is so important. You know, Betty, and I want to thank you. You've been answering some questions in chat, and we want to encourage you. If you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to pose it in chat. You've been answering a question, for instance, Angelique Charles asked about water pills, and how do you really get the message across that water pills don't help lymphedema?
Yeah, so that is the question I get a whole lot from patients, because that's kind of a doctor's go-to. And I hate to say it, but it just doesn't work. I mean, I take that back. I don't hate to say that. It doesn't work, and they should just know it. And so this is the conversation that has to happen, is that water pills help with water fluid. They take that water weight off of you. They don't take protein-rich lymphatic fluid off of you. In fact, it can kind of make your situation worse, because the lymphatic fluid has I think it's like 30% is the content of water. And if you're draining a lot of that water off and you're just making that protein-rich fluid thicker with the protein and less water, well, then you're really just like gunking up the system. And so years and years of water pills and no compression leads to fibrosis and a lot of just like stagnant lymph fluid. So I have, I know I'm here for Camp Watch Me, but of one of the many hats I have, I am also the host, one woman band, really, for the Lymphatic. And I have an episode on there called What is Lymphedema? And it really does talk about the difference between edema and lymphedema, and that's a really helpful concept to learn when you have lymphedema. And then I was explaining to Angelique in the chat, for anyone who has a doctor who is kind of, you know, giving you a little pushback on the water pill situation, I would just encourage you to go and look for a medical peer-reviewed journal, because doctors listen to other doctors. I can't tell you how many times they've said, you know, I just tell my doctor that I've talked to you. They don't really care what I have to say. If they don't know me on a personal level and they don't know what a lymphedema therapist is, they're going, I have this degree and they have that degree. I'm your doctor. This is kind of the way it is. Yep. So take them an article. They will listen to other doctors and they want to see evidence-based treatment before they take someone else's advice, lymphedema therapist or not. So do yourself a favor. If you have a doctor who's giving you some pushback, and take them an article and say, I just printed this off for you. It's here for your convenience. Go ahead and highlight the section you want to draw their attention to. They'll give it a look, or they'll give it to their nurse, and then you'll be able to get to them easier that way, because there's a huge difference between lymph fluid and just water fluid.
You can follow Betty Westbrook and her Lymphedema podcast, which is, how many episodes have you done? They're amazing.
I'm on 54 right now, and I'm looking to do a solid 52 additional episodes for 2021. So I'm staying home right now. I had a little boy over the summer, and I just sit at home and I'm mom and podcast mom and Camp Watch Me mom. And so I just sit around and work from the house now. So I have some great things planned for 2021 with the podcast. So stick around, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
We are going to stick around, and we also are delighted that we took you a little bit away tonight just for an hour to be a part of our panel. And you did mention Camp Watch Me. Now, on this panel, I know at least 2 people are going to be camp counselors, correct, Cam? Woo! Correct, Mary? Yeah, I hear that you're going to be camp counselors, but probably before the end of this webinar is over, Kelly will be signing up for it too. So tell us about Camp Watch Me, because there's nothing else like it in the world, and well, in the United States, and Medical Solutions Supplier and Lympha Press are proud to be sponsors of it. So go for it, Betty.
Thank you so much to Lympha Press, Medical Solutions Supplier, Arizona Vascular. You guys all are distributors for Lympha Press, and you guys have come alongside us. Brittany Williams is the founder of Bryland's Feet Foundation, and they are the only nonprofit in the world who helps children with lymphedema. And I just cannot emphasize that enough, because we see adults with lymphedema, but Cam, Mary Frances, Amy Rivera, my mind just went blank. Amy Rivera, they all talk about how when they were younger, they had these symptoms. Well, those kids could have had help if something like Bryland's Feet and Camp Watch Me was around then. And they wouldn't have had to wait till they were older and adults and, you know, trying to make it through college and also trying to work out what is this thing going on with my body. So Camp Watch Me is an event hosted by Bryland's Feet Foundation, and we are the only summer camp for kids in the United States, and we offer camp free to one parent and one kid. So you're not just shipping your kid off for a week so they can go learn about lymphedema, but mom or dad gets to come with them, and we teach mom and dad about it, because the parent is the best advocate for their child. I talk about Cora. At the time, she was like 3 when she came to camp with us in 2019. Cora's not going to make herself pump. Cora's not going to make herself wear a garment. And Cora's not going to call the vascular anomalies doctor and say, hey, what's going on with me? But her mom, Casey, can. And so we want to give those parents the tools they need while just letting the kids meet other kids who look like them. So it's inclusive and they don't ever feel like, "Oh, I've never seen anyone who looks like me." Because that's a really big, important thing in their lives, is to make those friendships and make those connections early on, because that's something you can't break.
So I saw the nods going on when you said there's nobody like a parent to help the child. Mary, you were nodding. Cam, you were nodding. You've been there. You've walked that walk. What's made you decided to get involved with Camp Watch Me? Any one of you can jump in on that.
And I was at the first summer camp that they had in 2019, and I got to tell you, from entering the campgrounds till leaving on the final day, that was one of the most, if not the most, fulfilling weekends of my entire life. More than reality TV BS, because those kids and those families, I saw them grow as individuals just in that 3-day period. There was one girl who you could tell day one did not want to be there. She was very shy, very introverted. You could just tell that her mom probably dragged her along there to go. But by the end of camp, she was singing with all the other girls and guys and just had the most bubbliest personality. I still stay in touch with her mother from time to time and check in on her. And, you know, for me, being an 11-year-old with lymphedema, I was teased and bullied all the time because I didn't know anybody else who had it. But if I would have had that community and that camaraderie and really just had a chance to feel normal, even for just a couple of days, that would have done a huge amount of positivity to my self-conscious and my self-worth at a young age. So I am super excited to be part of the next summer, and really applaud Brittany Williams and Betty Westbrook for putting on, because it's such an amazing program, and I know it's going to continue to grow.
And you will be hearing more about it on our social channels. Is there anything you wanted to add, Mary, before we move on?
Well, first off, you know, I was 12 when I started showing symptoms, and then 13 when I got diagnosed. And my mom, you know, wanted me to go to a support group, and I'll never forget walking in and seeing all of these old women, like 65, 70 plus, most of them in wheelchairs. And my mom said that my face just went white. And I was like, this is what I have. This is what I'm going to look like. You know, this is literally what the rest of my life is going to be. And, you know, like Cam said, I was bullied, and you feel so isolated because you don't have, you know, kids are so visual. And when you, especially in that middle school age, it's like the worst age to have anything wrong with you. You know, just throw them into the lion's den. So I would just like to say, you know, I had the pleasure of meeting Betty and Brittany at the NLN conference, and I am just so proud, you know, from being a kid during that time in my life. It is so, so crucial. Lymphedema is so much more than a physical condition. It is so psychological. And what you guys are doing is really, like, it could be a life or death change for them. You know, there's right there with you, Kelly. I've been through some really, really dark times. And to have that as a child, that, you know, hey, I have what you have. And I'm excited to be like, hey, I was there with you. Boys will like you. It's gonna be okay, you know? So I can't wait. I'm just thrilled to be a part of it.
I love it. Well, again, we're going to be talking a lot more about Camp Watch Me in the coming months. And Kelly, I want to talk to you for a minute. We have a question that's come in from Hope Walter. Hope, thank you for being here tonight. We're glad to have you. So she asks, where do you begin in terms of being diagnosed? How would anyone begin that journey today? What's the best advice you would give to someone beginning their lymphedema journey?
Wow, it's hard, because first, for me, and I have to say for me and a lot of other people, they self-diagnose either by videos on YouTube or by medical research. And then, like I think before we got on, I told people I was seeing 56 doctors and surgeons, right? And so out of those, 5 of those were even worth like going to when it came to lymphedema and lymphatic stuff. And so self-diagnose, and just like Betty said, take the information to the doctor, and hopefully they'll listen. Unfortunately, we're at their whim when it comes to, will you listen to this, will you understand this, and just keep pursuing it. And then finally you will find a doctor. I don't have a doctor. I'm 15 years into this. I do not have a doctor that treats my lymphedema. okay, or anything like that. Or even my current doctor tells me he's learning from me every day. Just
wow.
That's what you have to do. I am a rare one. I did have a lymphoscintigraphy. The therapist in the area that I've visited for either learn or for treatment, like, keep emailing me and ask me, how did you get your imaging? And really, for me, that was just a fortune of being in the military. I could push things up, and I actually pushed up to the highest level of DOD to get my imaging. But imaging is like, if you can get that done, that's the next step.
You know, I loved also, that's great advice. And I love what you said, Betty, about going in armed with information. And I see some unfamiliar names in our list of attendees tonight. If you would like to be linked with some studies that can show the efficacy of pneumatic compression in the Lympha Press, or perhaps there's someone in our referral network that we could connect you with to give you the kind of medical help that you really need, feel free to email us. The email is directly in the link that you signed up for this webinar, or you can email me at bviola@medsoulsupplier.com. Mary is available, Cam is available. We are all here to support you. We are all about genuinely providing help and support for the lymphedema community. And there is a lot of people out there that are walking the walk and talking the talk and fighting the fight. In fact, Kelly, you were mentioning about the Lymphedema Treatment Act and how you are rooting for some action to take place on that before the end of the year. I know many of you are involved with LEARN, the Lymphatic Education and Research Network. It's an organization we're so proud to be connected with, and they have been strong advocates for the Lymphedema Treatment Act. Does anyone want to give us a thumbnail sketch of what the LTA actually is and how we can support it?
Go ahead.
Can I go, Kelly?
Go.
Jump in.
I'll follow you.
Okay. So the Lymphedema Treatment Act, now I will tell you, I don't have my numbers down because I kind of get stuck on like the first year when I started, and it was a different House and Senate bill. Every year it kind of changes a little bit. But if you go to www.lymphedematreatmentact.org, they it's extremely simple. I mean, I haven't seen a website that has made anything this easy. So you can go in and you can put in who your rep is, you know, what your district is, where you're located, and they basically give you a pre-made text. So email if you want to email, a call script if you want to call. You can call, email, fax, write a letter. You can do all of it. And it's just kind of pre-automated for you. It says exactly what you need to say, and you can add your story to it. But the Lymphedema Treatment Act fills in that gap that Medicare just didn't include. So as a patient, if you have lymphedema and you have Medicare, you can have some of your garments paid for, but only if you have an open wound or you have been in wound care for the last year. They'll pay for you to go to the hospital if you get cellulitis, and they'll pay for you to go to your lymphedema therapist, and they'll pay for your visits, but they won't help pay for that thing that helps you kind of close that gap, which is compression. So the Lymphedema Treatment Act is the first step toward getting that gap closed so that you can have compression first. So you kind of eliminate the wounds and you eliminate the hospitalizations, or at least decrease them. So the Lymphedema Treatment Act has so much support on the Hill. I don't know.
71 senators that sponsor it. It's already passed the House with 386 sponsors. Yeah. 71 senators means if it hits the floor and they vote like they sponsor, it passes. It's sat there. Yeah. Heather Ferguson in North Carolina with me started this when her child with primary lymphedema was in diapers. That boy is now in high school. It is ridiculous that it has not passed. So I made it a mission of mine to say, hey, I took an oath to serve the people. This is ridiculous because lymphedema takes away your freedoms, and so give people back their freedoms. This is such a simple thing because those hospital cost days you're talking about cost anywhere from $40,000 to $120,000. And Medicare covers most of that, but they won't cover the preventative. Like when we were there last March like at the beginning of COVID, believe it or not. So consider this. People with compromised immune systems felt it was so important that they knew they were taking that risk, but they wanted to get this passed. We're out there. Everyone I met was saying, like all the senators, it was an oversight, literally, from the Medicare when they revamped it. And so now I always like to push that. So now you're telling us that these patients are oversights. How are you going to fix it? To be honest with you, it's fixed. They just need to vote on it or include it in something. And so I just encourage everyone to go out there and click either the email button, which literally you fill in your name. It gives you a blanket if you don't want, and you just hit go, or you can add your own personal text to it, or you hit call. It'll tell you your state, and you can call the number and you can read the script. You may get a voicemail box. Leave a message. I've been on the hill enough to know all that stuff is counted. There is literally someone going through there and telling their senator, their congressman or woman what is going on and what's being called in. So, and the bad thing is, if it doesn't pass, all those people that have been doing this for 10 years and going up on the hill will be up there again trying to get this through. It's like all the time and all it's wasted because there's a new Senate, new Congress coming in, and so we got to go fight for it again.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I think that was an impassioned plea for us to get behind and support the Lymphedema Treatment Act. And I want to get to another question from one of our attendees tonight. The wonderful Brittany Williams of Fryland's Feet Foundation has a question about options as far as Lympha Press for pediatric patients. Now that custom is an option, so many parents don't think a pump can be made for a child, and that's not true, correct?
Correct.
That's correct. So Karen Ashworth, who is a certified lymphedema therapist in Northern California, her and I did a joint presentation at Texas Children's Hospital right before COVID hit this year. And Texas Children's Hospital is actually a Learn Center of Excellence for pediatric lymphatic care and research. So one of the things that we discussed in the presentation was looking at the clinical studies and the clinical data. When is it appropriate for a pediatric patient to pump? And what the studies show is that 2 years of age or older, it is safe in most cases for a pediatric patient to receive pneumatic compression. So obviously we will take it case by case, but yes, Lympha Press absolutely can create custom garments for pediatric patients, upper or lower extremity. And that's one of my biggest passions in the Houston territory, is to serve those pediatric patients, because those are the ones who you catch them early on, you have a patient for life, and you'll find nobody more appreciative than the parents of those patients, because you save them time, you save them headache, and you give their kids their quality of life back.
That's wonderful. Well said. Anything else you want to add to that, Mary? Or
I definitely, am very passionate about children's care as well. One thing that I was going to add is a really cool factor of the Lympha Press, of all of the garments, is that they inflate to fit as well. This is awesome because as the child grows, we can work with that. Yes, it will be a custom garment, but within that, you can get, several years in one garment, even as they grow older, which is important. I know, some of the other products are just so difficult to use, and you have to fumble with Velcro and everything, and we can make it really simple, which is nice, because especially for kids, I was super independent, and there was nothing I hated more than needing help. And to have a child, anywhere from probably like 10 to early teens be able to do that by themselves means the world to them.
So I see in our listing of attendees tonight, Catherine Rosenberg, and she is one of my favorite people. If you ever go to the Medical Solutions Supplier YouTube channel, we have a whole interview with her. Catherine, I almost want to allow you to talk, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you had a very personal experience. In fact, she battled cancer as a child and was victorious, but the outflow of that was lymphedema. Catherine, why don't you tell us your testimony about the Lympha Press Optimal Plus and what pneumatic compression did for you?
As Brenda said, I am a cancer survivor with lymphedema. Actually, I just hit 30 years on Saturday. And I with lymphedema since for almost 30 years. It'll be 30 years in February. And I've actually been using Lympha Press since I was 8 years old. I did switch to another pump, and it was too difficult to work with. So I actually caught up with Cam. Cam, is it 2 years ago?
2 years ago at NLN, yep.
Yeah, it was in Boston. And Cam helped me to be able to get back with Lympha Press. And I have the Optimal Plus. I got that in May, and it has been a game changer for me. My fibrosis is the best it has ever been. When I had a video conference with my surgeon in June, he said to me that he was not expecting my leg to look as good as it does now for another year. I am a post-lymphatic transplant and bypass surgery patient with stage. When he did the lymphoscintigraphy, I was classified as a modified stage 4. And right now my leg is only about 11% larger than my other side.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm actually back to work full time now. Right now we're virtual, but I'm actually a full-time high school math teacher and special ed teacher. So able to do everything that I used to not be able to do.
Catherine, we applaud you. You are inspirational. I hope a lot of people will look up that YouTube video with you. And, you know, look, it's real people having real experiences and having success managing this chronic condition. Hey, I wanted to go to you, Cam, because you had sent me an email and said, you know, one of the things we could talk about is the seasonality of lymphedema.
The viewers out there who don't know, I'm born and raised in Houston, Texas, and Houston is one of the hottest and most humid cities in the United States. And one thing that didn't really dawn on me when I was younger is during these summer months, which in Texas, it's like 9 months out of the year is summer, that would really trigger my leg to swell more than not. And a lot of people can relate to this because if you have people who don't have lymphedema, you may notice it's harder to take off your jewelry sometimes in those summer months because, you know, with that heat and humidity, there's inflammation naturally. So when you have something like lymphedema or lipedema, you're going to swell more in the summer times or when it's more hot and humid outside. So one of the things that I get from a lot of my patients is, you know, when they look at the garments, the Lympha Press garments, say, man, that thing's going to be really hot. I'm going to sweat right through that. And that was one of the things I was most pleasantly about as a patient is when I wear the leg sleeve garments or the pantsuit garment, even in the hottest of hot Texas summer months, I don't sweat through it at all. It actually almost has a cooling sensation, not that there's a built-in cooler, but when you move that lymphatic fluid, it's like my body temperature drops and I just feel like I'm not as hot and the inflammation definitely goes down. And I know Betty, from a lymphedema therapist perspective, can talk a little bit more just high level about the seasonality of lymphedema.
Yeah, so I have a lot of patients who will say, you know, now that it's cooled off, because I'm in Texas also, but I also was just talking with a family with a little boy in Connecticut. And she was saying, you know, now that it's kind of, you know, we've had our first snow and it's a lot cooler, we can tell that his foot isn't as swollen. And the temperature does make a difference. It makes a difference in how your body is functioning and filtering. And so heat, rough. Winter, good. So if you can get to a cooler temperature, even if you can't, you know, get out of your local state or your local area, just get into some cooler temperature, some cooler water if you can, try to cool off and just do the best you can to get through those summer months. But yeah, seasons definitely affect it. And I tell patients all the time, like, you need your toolbox to grow and shrink with you. So you may get dead set on, I have lost 5 centimeters, I'm not going back up. You will. It won't stay, but there is an up and a down. The fluidity of lymphedema, it's not just based on the lymphatic fluid, it is a roller coaster. So you kind of have to ebb and flow with the ups and downs as they come, and kind of just prepare yourself mentally as well, so that you don't get stuck on that number as much as, you know, I'm doing all the things that I can do. Or if you take a break and you don't wear your compression one afternoon and you want to go out and shop or go to a concert and not have compression or something, you know, you kind of have to beef it up and do some extra stuff the next day to kind of rally and get control of it, instead of going, you know what, every time I take it off for a couple of hours, it's just worse, so I'm just going to stop wearing it. You just kind of have to have that mindset of, if I'm going to give myself some flexibility to get out of it, I really got to get back on top of my game to get it back down, instead of letting it beat you up and make you feel bad about that ebb and flow, because it's definitely a real thing.
One thing that I would like to add to, I've heard of a lot of people who are just like, oh, it's too hot to wear compression in the summer. I wear a flat knit all year round. And I will tell you, at first I was like, oh, this is going to be so hot. Your body gets used to it a little bit. You know, I feel like it's worth it, especially being diagnosed so young. I was very embarrassed at first about having to wear compression, and I didn't. And I quickly realized it's not worth it. You know, I even wear old stockings when I go to the beach or I'm in the water, because it's hard to have that fluctuation where you're miserable for the next 2 or 3 days trying to take it under control. Consistency is key with lymphedema. You, like Cam knows, you can't take a day off. Gravity is not taking a day off. Your lymphatic system's not taking a day off. So like Betty said, having that arsenal of different tools, but also just making sure, you know, how you feel is, if you're on a vacation at a beach and you're not wearing your compression, it's probably going to make you feel not as good, and you might not enjoy it as enough if you just kind of suit up and you're like, I'm just going to wear it anyway, and kind of get over the fear of, what are people going to think? Are people looking at me? Because you're doing what's best for your body. And it takes a while to get there, but I definitely, summer months, you're swelling anyway, you definitely need that compression on.
Yeah, because like where my lymphatics is damaged, it literally affects like everything, even my organs. And so I feel like anytime like a storm's coming in, hurricanes coming in, I get a couple days out, I can tell you without even, I'll look at my wife and go, I'm not feeling good today. Is there a storm coming in the next couple of days? Wow. Being an engineer, I've mapped this, and I know for a fact the weather affects your body.
Yeah.
So it definitely, for me, I get up every morning like with plans, and hopefully my body's going to cooperate. That's what you have to accept.
So I've been on a learning curve all year about lipedema, and I continue to learn about lymphedema. And what I have heard over and over again is it's not one size fits all. There may be some commonalities, but it may affect each person differently. Kelly, you were saying that to me before we started broadcasting live tonight, that it's not one size fits all. And for instance, you have some challenges breathing on occasion. Not everybody has that.
Right. Well, like the first thing I noticed, believe it or not, was my breathing. I was training for an Ironman at the time, and like it was, ironically, it was an hour after I worked out, and that became like, you tell a doctor that, they just look at you, and I mean, and so for years I kept mapping the body and figuring how this could work, and then eventually lining upon oxygen. Diagnosed with COPD and all these other things. And I kept saying, it's my lymphatics, And wow. Now there's current research to prove that what I'm saying is true. And even today, I'm developing, it's slowly degrading. And I shared with you current research that shows like any anomaly that affects the thoracic duct could degrade pulmonary function. And so now, I've got to go find this one doctor doing this research, and hopefully he'll see me, and we can hopefully try to mitigate this before this becomes an issue.
Yeah. So the other thing I hear a lot from the medical community and from the patients I talk to is listen to your body. Do you agree with that, Betty, in terms of don't just ignore something? I'm so glad you didn't ignore what was going on with you this week, Cam, and went and got the attention that you needed. But if it doesn't feel good, listen to your body and know that you need to respond accordingly. anything else you could add to that, Betty, as good advice?
Yeah, I definitely agree that patients should listen to their body's warnings, and also just kind of how you respond to treatment, different bandaging, different compression techniques. Some therapists and some schools of thought is, you know, the more the better. Some kind of like to back off, and a little lighter pressure or a little lighter compression works. It's trial and error most of the time, especially in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so I would say, listen to your body and build a relationship with your therapist. I chuckle a little bit because I'm thinking of my friend Luann. She sadly passed just a couple months ago in October. And I did an episode on her recently, and it talks about in that episode how I was new, so forgive me, and she did. So I was just like, do this. I'm telling you, do this. And she would come in and she would have, you know, all these things that happened, and she didn't like it. It didn't feel good. It wasn't working with her schedule, whatever it was. And I just kept saying, you have to do this. And she finally just yelled at me and she said, the horse is dead, Betty. And if you're from the South, no animals were actually hurt. But I had just beat her down with rigid textbook treatment, and it wasn't working for her. And it sure wasn't working for me, because I was just mad that we weren't getting anywhere, and she was just frustrated that we weren't getting anywhere. And I was too naive and too novice to listen to her while she was listening to herself. Wow. So a few years later, I can now look back and say, I should have kind of been like, okay, let's revamp. So as a therapist, I like to listen to my patients. I want them to listen to their bodies, and you can't be textbook, because not everyone is a textbook. And I don't want to get an email from either one of the school's leadership like Zuther or Norton, but sometimes the textbook just doesn't work. You have to take the basis of your education and kind of make it work for that patient. I don't ever want to encourage people to just kind of go rogue and just start doing whatever they want, because you need to have a foundation, but you definitely need to have flexibility to listen to your patient and give them the option so they can listen to themselves, and you can work together and help them.
Thank you for sharing that story. I'm so sorry that your friend passed, but she taught you a lesson that we're all benefiting from this evening. And I have to say, I knew this was going to happen. An hour has gone by like that. And this is just the first lymphedema patient roundtable. I am hoping that there will be many more to come. We would love to hear from you. We would love your questions. We'd love to have so many questions come in between now and next month that we can't even almost get through to them all, but we'll promise to get back to you as much as we can. I want to personally thank you, Betty, for taking your time away from your little boy and being with us this evening. We hope that you'll join us again on this panel. Kelly Bell, you are a veteran fighting lymphedema, and they couldn't have a better fighter on the team. We appreciate and honor you, and thank you for your service and for your heart and for your message. Mary, you are a fresh voice that has championed the cause of the primary lymphedema patient, and we're so darn proud to have you on the Lympha Press team. What an authentic voice and somebody who is walking the walk. And Cam, you know, it is a joy to work with you. You are someone who puts your heart and soul. I mean, you're just fresh out of the hospital, and here you are at the Lymphedema Patient Roundtable answering questions. And you know why? Because you care, and you wear your heart on your sleeve. You care so much. And so I applaud all of you. I consider it an honor to moderate tonight's roundtable. I want to thank all of you for joining us. You can watch the replay on YouTube, and hopefully you'll join us next month. And since we won't see you before, have happy holidays, everyone, and happy new year. Here's to more fun in 2021. 2020, don't let the door hit you, right? Have a great night, everybody. And thanks again for tuning in. See ya.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.